Canelo Alvarez just lost for the first time since 2013 to Dmitry Bivol. Huge upset. Let's break it down. Inside Boxing Live, rapid reaction. Let's go. What is up, everybody? Dan Canobbio here. Inside Boxing Live, brought to you by John Boy Media. We come to you in the wee hours Sunday morning. A stunning upset as Dmitry Bivol did the damn thing. Handed Canelo Alvarez his first loss since 2013, and it was not controversial at all. It was a beatdown. Canelo didn't hit the deck at all, but his ego certainly bruised. His face bruised, his legs tired. But this is not about Canelo Alvarez. This is about Dmitry Bivol, a guy that no one gave a chance to, a guy that relative obscurity, a guy that learned English by watching Friends DVDs, a guy that said even if he got robbed on the scorecards, if he thought he won, that would have been fine by him. But guess what? He didn't get robbed. 115, 113 all around, unanimous decision. Wasn't a 115, 113 fight. I had it 9 rounds to 3, but the judges got it right. All week long, we heard that Dmitry Bivol could never get a decision in Vegas against Canelo Alvarez. Well, guess what? He just did. From the opening bell, I thought Canelo came out loading up on his shots. Maybe it was because he's at 175 and you know, maybe he felt too heavy, but I hadn't seen him loading up on shots like that in a long time. But Bivol came out early jabbing, which we knew. I told you the jab numbers all week long, 10 plus jabs in 21 straight rounds, which came to an end. 342 landed jabs in those last 2 fights. First 2-3 rounds, I'm thinking, oh man, I don't think Bivol can win a fight like this by fighting how we usually see Bivol fight. But something changed around the 4th or 5th round when Bivol started to sit down in those combinations, started to fire away at Canelo. Canelo was just beating on the arms of Bivol. Afterwards, Bivol said, I'm pretty sure my arm is broken, but my head is not. I thought it was a great line from Bivol. But around the 5th round as well is when we were seeing Canelo visibly frustrated for the first time since the first Golovkin fight, or at least the 2 Golovkin fights, and sucking wind. His mouth was open in the 5th and 6th round, frustrated, not able to move Bivol at all in there. None of his shots like we've seen at 168 or 160, or even the shots he was landing on Kovalev at 175, he was not having that same effect on Bivol. And all week long, I read tweets, I listened to podcasts, I heard people that I respect in the industry say that I don't think Bivol has the right temperament to beat Canelo Alvarez. I don't think he has that killer instinct. Turned out it was the opposite. It wasn't temperament for Bivol, it was poise. Because he stayed poised in there. There was that big moment where he had like a flurry and he had Canelo hurt and he kind of like didn't go for the kill again. Canelo was trying to set traps and Bivol was not, falling for him. He just kept fighting his game plan, abandoned the jab midway through the fight and started hammering power shots. It was the complete opposite game plan. I mean, maybe he had Canelo befuddled in there because I thought that Bivol was going to come in and just throw jab, 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 like I said, under 20 power shots and try to, sneak out and win that way. I didn't think that he would reverse the tide and start throwing body shots and start throwing, not body shots, but power shots, have the edge in punches landed, have the edge in power. Canelo landed only 84 punches in this fight. That is the lowest total for Canelo Alvarez in a 12-round fight in his career. To put it in perspective, Canelo landed 117 punches against Floyd Mayweather. Canelo landed in single digits in 10 of the 12 rounds. And another thing I talked about all week or for a while now is how I loved Canelo's style. That low volume, high accuracy, game-changing power. Well, today it was low volume, no accuracy, and 0 game-changing power. It's a tightrope. You're walking a tightrope when you fight that style because it's going to catch up to him sooner or later, and it caught up to him today. But shout out to Canelo. Did not have to take this fight. This is a fight that absolutely no one called for. Dmitry Bivol, a guy with 0 profile, a guy that brings in 0 audience, is a legit 175 pounder in his prime. when there was fights with Benavidez out there were fights with Charlo, there was fights with Golovkin. Canelo could go any way he wanted, but you got to give him props for wanting to go after Bivol, challenging to fight the best, and he lost. It's the second loss of his career officially. If you had him losing to Golovkin, got a few draws in there too, but it was stunning to see Canelo visibly frustrated. Stunning to see him getting pieced up with punches. Stunning to see him stretching. It's just the guy's just been invincible for the last, 3 or 4 years. That was something to watch, man. What a year it's been for boxing. We're not even halfway through, and we get one of the biggest upsets in boxing in a very long time. And I had someone tell me on Twitter that it's not an upset. Okay, that's an upset. By the definition of the word, that is an upset. 5-1 underdog was Bivol. Shout out to my boy Robbie Tebbett, who was all week long was talking about Bivol's chances in this fight. Up till today, I'm pretty sure he took Bivol at 15-2. So I'm sure Rob is buying a lot of large pizzas for the next couple of weeks. But what a performance by Dmitry Bivol. And now it's, he can wait to see what happens at 175 with Beterbiev and Joe Smith. He can take the rematch. But to be honest, I don't see a rematch playing out any differently. Canelo maybe is not a 175 pounder. Maybe all those years of wear and tear, maybe the fact that he has more money than God, and maybe, with the ego, and who knows, did he train hard for this fight? The guy is a massive celebrity. We see him out golfing. We see him out, enjoying the fruits of his labor, which is fine. That's great. But that stuff catches up to you soon. He's 31 years old, but he's he's been in this game for a long time. 400 plus rounds, 192 or 194 championship rounds. Been at this since he was a teenager. And tonight he had legit nothing. I don't recall a single moment in the fight that he had. Maybe a few glancing uppercuts. The biggest moment for Canelo in this fight was just beating up the arms of Dmitry Bivol, who said he knew that was going to be the case. Couldn't even hold his belt after the fight in that post-fight interview. But where does Canelo Alvarez go from here? I mean, I suppose he can go back down to 168. I suppose he can still fight Golovkin. I suppose, fights with Benavidez or fights with Charlo, or, it's strange because usually it's like we know where Canelo's going to go next. It's him choosing an opponent. It's him, like he said, like kind of being the commissioner of boxing. Like, no, Benavidez and Charlo need to fight in order to fight me now. No, he doesn't have that luxury anymore. Still brings in a lot of money, and he's got that. But it's interesting to see where Canelo's going to go from here. A third fight with Golovkin, I never really liked the idea of it. Even now, I mean, it didn't really mean much with the belt. I guess it could still be for the undisputed at 168. I mean, I guess it could be interesting. I guess he can go that route. Eddie Hearn just spoke to someone on the broadcast. I have no idea what he said because I had him muted. But let's see, where does Canelo go from here? I tweeted out a bunch of people saying he should stay at 168, forget the rematch, go on to the Triple G trilogy. Triple G3 makes as much sense as ever, says my boy John Effenholver, WVU guy. Charlo, then Triple G, says Shay Simmons. Rematch and stay at 168. I don't know about a rematch. A rematch would be really, really tough because one loss at 175, you can kind of say, you know what, Canelo was, I hate to use this term, daring to be great. And, you got to cut him some slack here. I mean, he didn't have to take this fight, blah, blah, blah. But you lose twice to Bivol, and then you're starting to say, wait a second, is Canelo is this it? Is this the end of Canelo being an elite fighter at age 31? Well, he said he wants the rematch. A lot of people are saying, go back down and wait. Zachary says to his mansion with his beautiful family, a year off, run it back. Women's division, says Cesar. That's a funny one. I think Katie Taylor would beat him. No, I'm just kidding. Fight a tune-up and then fight Charlo. I could see a tune-up. I could see, he does have a lot of mandatories at 168, like a John Ryder fight. I mean, it doesn't do a lot for boxing fans, but, if he wants to go for that, just, get a win, but that's interesting. I didn't think I was going to be having this discussion right now. I honestly thought that Canelo was going to win, but it was going to be a close decision for him. And I said that it was going to be as tough as Dmitry Bivol made it for him. Dmitry Bivol made it extremely tough for Canelo Alvarez, limited to, single-digit connects. I can't believe that. But Canelo can go in a lot of different directions. I just don't know which one he's going to go in. It's interesting. I mean, he's been fighting his whole life. Like I said, he could take that time off. He wants to fight in May, or excuse me, in September. Honestly, if I had to be a betting man right now, I would say that the Golovkin fight is still on. It does make sense because people were looking at it as a tune-up fight. People were looking at it as Golovkin has absolutely no shot to win. I wonder what people think about that right now. Back down at 168 where Canelo probably belongs. His defense looked pretty good tonight, Canelo. The power was just not there. The stamina was not there. The legs weren't there. I'd be shocked if, he was 100% healthy. Didn't make any excuses after the fight. But we'll see in the next couple of days because this is going to be a massive blow to his ego. This guy was on top since the Mayweather fight. It was, that fight, obviously Canelo lost, but from that point on, he was pretty damn dominant. Close fights with Golovkin, close fights with Cotto. A couple of those other fights were close, but he always got the dub. Everyone thought that he was going to be able, or at least when I was watching this fight, thought that he was going to be able to pull it out somewhat. He was going to land an uppercut that was going to move Bivol and start hammering away. But as you got to the later rounds, you're like, wait a second. Bivol has an answer for everything on the balls of his feet, just like a machine. The guy's a machine. Dmitry Bivol is a very, very good fighter. Very, very good champion. Someone that was overlooked by practically everyone. I put out the video this week with his numbers, the jabs. It was mostly the jabs and the defense. He had a great defense tonight. He's the best defender in boxing. He only gets hit with 5.4 punches per round. How many did they get hit with tonight, Bob? I got Bob Canobbio here. Bob, president of CompuBox. 5.4, 84 divided by, whatever 84 divided by 12 is, that's how many punches that Dmitry Bivol. 7. So that's pretty damn good number against Canelo Alvarez. Bivol had an answer for everything. No game-changing power, though, but he had Canelo rocked a few times. He probably a stronger puncher and a more aggressive fighter would have maybe gotten Canelo out of there. But, Canelo has a really good chin. But Dmitry Bivol is that guy right now. Does he enter the top 10 pound-for-pound list now when you dethrone number one? That's another question now. Who is the number one pound-for-pound fighter in the world right now? Is it Terrence Crawford? Is it Alexander Usyk? Is it Errol Spence? Is it Naoya Inoue? Where does Canelo slip to? I'm not a big pound-for-pound guy, but I know a lot of you out there are. Well, that's going to be an interesting debate. I think this is good for boxing. This is a good thing. Going up in weight, taking fight that you didn't have to, giving us some entertainment, giving us things to talk about as boxing fans, giving us things to think about. I know there's going to be a lot of Canelo haters out there right now that are just very, very happy to see Canelo finally lose. But he went up in weight and he fought someone very, very tough. But this is good for the sport. I mean, it shakes up the sport a little bit. But I expect Canelo to go down to 168. I guess we could talk about the undercard. That undercard was putrid. That was one of the worst undercards I have ever seen. The only thing that got us through that undercard was watching the Barstool Sports alternative feed that was actually kind of hilarious. Portnoy, Big Cat, Robbie Fox, Roan, Caleb Plant, cameos by Scott Nicholson, my guy Large. A little rough off the gate from them. They had technical issues. But the best part about it was they were just like, yeah, straight up, our mics aren't working. They're throwing people under the bus. Big Cat during the Montana Love fight was like, straight up, this fight sucks. It was a terrible fight. Montana Love stunk it up, got a win. I guess Big Zhang, Big Bang. Zilai Zhang got a knockout in like 30 seconds. That was probably the highlight of the undercard. Maybe Sky Nicholson eating chicken wings with the Barstool guys. That undercard was putrid. When you're giving Canelo the lion's share, over 40 million or whatever he made for this fight, you're going to get very bad undercards. Maybe they should have spread it out a little bit. The last Taylor Serrano undercard had some good fights on it. Maybe put some of those on this one and put some of these fights that we saw tonight on the Taylor Serrano undercard, or figure it out, because that was pretty bad. But you're a boxing fan, you understand that they're bad undercards, and then once the last bell rings of that co-main event, things ratchet up, and they did. Canelo had the great ring walk. The mariachi playing Final Countdown. Yeah, it was the Final Countdown for Canelo's winning streak. But it was funny. Bivol entered the ring, pretty much the most anticlimactic ring walk I've ever seen for a champion. Came in the ring first. He talked after the fight that if there is a rematch, I want to be treated as the champion. So I would say he was a little disrespected here and there, but that's the case when you fight Canelo Alvarez. It's the biggest lottery ticket in boxing. But Bivol's ring walk was like 3 seconds long. He pretty much ran into the ring. The music played, and that was the end of it. And then it went right to the big production for Canelo coming up on a big stage. And in hindsight, kind of looks funny as he lost the fight. But Canelo Alvarez loses for the first time since 2013 to Floyd Mayweather. Officially loses. I had to put that in parentheses when I tweeted it because a lot of people had him losing to Golovkin. I did. I thought he lost the first fight to Golovkin, and the second fight maybe a draw, maybe to Canelo, but hadn't seen him that frustrated since those Golovkin fights. Let's see. We got some more live reactions. I think Canelo needs to stay small, not cut that much weight, walk around smaller, and be lighter, faster fighter. I think his stamina will be better that way, says Louis Seha. Yeah, I agree with that. Here we go with I said that the rematch may not play out any differently, maybe worse, says Higo. It seemed like Bivol just didn't want to let go too much, cruise control-esque. Yeah, in a way, I thought Bivol was more aggressive than I thought he would be towards the end. He still had moments where maybe if he let his hands go even more, he could have stopped Canelo. But, he had the fight in the bag, or at least we thought. Judges had it 115, 113, but Bivol changed it up. He didn't really throw a lot of jabs in this fight. He threw a lot of pawing jabs, threw a lot of jabs early, but towards the end of the fight, it was power shots. It was power shots that won Bivol this fight. Talked about it all week long. Where's the power? He doesn't throw his power. Doesn't commit to it. Well, he did tonight in the biggest fight of his career, and he beats Canelo Alvarez. This guy, Don Yeek, says, Canelo doesn't belong at 175. Hats off to him for taking the risk and going up to face the division's best, but it's not natural for him. He thought he could throw paper shots all fight like he does normally, but ended up gassing out super early and quickly. That's a really good assessment of the fight. Right away, Canelo was throwing, he was really loading up in that first round. And I was like, whoa, man, I haven't seen him load up like that in a while. Usually he starts slow. So it's kind of weird. It's like the opposite of what we've seen from these two guys over the last couple of fights. Canelo, we've seen a slow starter, calculated, breaking a guy down. Just didn't happen. For Bivol, we see a guy that relies on his jab, doesn't really commit. And that was the opposite for Bivol. What else we see going on Twitter world? Man, what a freaking fight. What a night. What do we move on to next week? We see Charlo and Benavidez. Boxing world buzzing right now. Boxing world is Charlo and Castano. When I say Charlo and Benavidez, I want to see Charlo and Benavidez. I want to see Jamal Charlo fight David Benavidez. I got to thank Bob, who's here in the background. It's now 1:15 a.m. But Canelo Alvarez loses. First loss since 2013. This is interesting to me. This is why when you're in my world doing podcasts and boxing media, taking a look at the landscape of the sport, this is when it gets interesting. This is when we take a look at Canelo Alvarez, a guy that's been in the limelight for a very long time, been carrying the sport, with maybe just that one section of his career when he was in that dispute with Golden Boy. But since he got freed from Golden Boy, it's been Canelo nonstop, fighting 4 times a year, unifying and clearing out a whole division in 1 year. Where will he go next? Will he go right back at it? Will he take time off? Will he go for Golovkin? Will he take one of these mandatories at 168? One thing's for certain, he's not fighting Alexander Usyk. That was one of the most ridiculous fight week rumors I've heard in years. Alexander Usyk. Give me a break. Lou DiBella chimes in on where Canelo should go from here. How about 168, where he belongs? He lost to a strong, technically brilliant, bigger man. He's still a great fighter. He's never been unbeatable. Watch the Floyd fight. Stick to the Triple G plan and then fight Charlo, Andrade, and Benavidez. Pretty obvious plan to me, says Luigi. Good. I like it. Don't hate it. You know, the guy, Ludabella knows how to plan careers and figure out what are good fights. That's fun. I mean, that's what everyone wants to see, right? I still wanted to see a fight with Beterbiev. Who knows? Maybe he can do that down the line if, you know, he has some fights at 168, but Beterbiev ain't getting any younger. Biggest losers tonight, outside of Golovkin, maybe not getting that fight with Canelo, is Joe Smith and Arthur Beterbiev. They went from potentially fighting Canelo in a undisputed fight at 175 to now fighting Bivol. And no disrespect to Bivol, but it's not the same as fighting Canelo Alvarez. That's still a fight I want to see. I still want to see Bivol versus Beterbiev. That would be an awesome fight. You know, talk about two different styles there. But we got to see how that plays out June 18th at Madison Square Garden, the theater. Beterbiev and Joe Smith. Anything else going on in the Twitter world that I should know about? But wow, probably Bivol rematch back to 168. I don't know if he takes that rematch. I just don't. I don't see him hopping back into that rematch right away. It's too risky for his career right now. His career is in a little bit of limbo for the first time in a very long time, maybe the first time ever, outside of the clenbuterol. Yes, that's another thing. He did test positive for performance enhancing drug. He needs to really think. You know, he's got a good team around him. He needs to think about what's next. A move to 168 would probably be wise because his leg, he was stretching in between rounds. He was breathing heavy. Just, you know, he's a short guy. 5'8". You're not a guy that started his career at what, 140? 175, you're pushing it, man. There's weight classes for a reason. I think he's a perfect 168er. There's some huge fights at 168. Biggest winners now of this whole thing is Charlo, Benavidez. Some of these mandatories at 168, John Ryder. Let me know what you think. Let me know what everyone thinks about what Canelo Alvarez should do next. But Dmitry Bivol is the man tonight. One of the biggest upsets in a very long time. It is an upset. He's got everything going for him, man. He almost looked shocked after the fight. He almost looked like, damn, I just did that. Like, oh, wow. I think it's all going to set in like right now for Dmitry Bivol. He's in the driver's seat. He gets a rematch. You know, he's the A side. He gets a lot more money. You know, his side will probably push for it because other than that, he's got to wait, you know, sit out and wait to see how this fight plays out with Beterbiev and Joe Smith. That's the only other fight to make for him outside of Canelo rematch. But Dmitry Bivol is that guy. Next week, we're going to have a lot more content coming your way. A lot of Charlo Castaño stuff. Floyd Mayweather versus Don Moore on a helipad in Dubai. Just kidding. I won't be talking about that fight at all. It's a ton of fights next week. I think Zurdo Ramirez fights next week on DAZN. A little bit of a after this weekend with the Charlo and Castaños, a little bit of a slow period. There's still a lot of fights, but nothing huge until I guess you consider what's his name? Why am I forgetting? Gervonta versus Rolly. Do you consider that a huge fight? I consider it a big fight because it's Gervonta Davis, one of the biggest stars. But then we get into June, which is just loaded. Looks like July is going to be Usyk and Joshua. I'm looking forward to Rolly and Gervonta. I'm mostly looking forward to seeing my boy Leonard Ellerby, give him a nice big hug, and maybe going out to Junior's Cheesecakes on Atlantic Avenue and just burying the hatchet. Because Leonard's my guy. But a lot of big stuff coming this week over at John Boy Media. We'll have a podcast out Thursday. We'll have a lot of content coming your way. This has been the Rapid Reaction Podcast. Canelo Alvarez loses for the first time since 2013. Dmitry Bivol is that guy. See you next week.